Testing, testing, testing. 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 Hello, what is up, everybody? Mark Johansson here with Midgard Mercantile, back again for another live stream. We're here with many rocks and crystals. Just gonna give you guys a little rundown of how we run things here. So, basically, to give you guys a little bit of a history, we've been in the business for a couple years now, and my dad and I, we both run the business together, Midgard Mercantile. It's a rock, gem, and mineral business, and we are avid rock hounds. I'm a geologist. We know everything there is, or almost everything there is to know about these rocks, from the metaphysical aspects, historical aspects, geological formation, that kind of thing. So, yeah, we have all sorts of stuff. And when the pandemic hit, we were actually about to do a show, like a actual in-person rock show, which got canceled, sadly. So we've been doing these live streams every single weekend for you guys at home, so you guys can have a little taste of Mother Earth while you're stuck at home. So we have all sorts of things here: fossils, crystals, rocks, and we have a showcase here. So we're going to be showcasing each one of these specimens one at a time. Each one has a price. And if you see something that you like on the stream, just in the chat or in the comment section, just say, I want that, and we'll get you an order set up. So without further ado, let's get this started. All right. So we're going to start off here with some champagne calcite. This piece is $19. And this calcite comes from Mexico, around Durango, Mexico City. And all of our calcites, in fact, come from around that area, at least our colorful specimens. There's an ancient lake bed there. The whole area used to be like an inland sea that filled in multiple times. And calcite is what we call an evaporate mineral. So it forms where you have evaporating water. So that's just kind of like a little taste of how these guys form. The color comes from various impurities inside the water, or the, whatever the minerals in the area were. So, for example, iron could make it yellow or red. You could have chromium, could make it green. Chlorine, which could make it green. Cobalt, all sorts of things. Magnesium. So all these different impurities will actually color the crystal. So that's what gives calcite all its various colors. The place this comes from has all sorts of colors. They have yellows, reds, greens, blues, you name it, all within the same mine. So basically it's this big layer cake of calcite, and over the course of about 100 years it's been mined for various things. The native civilizations that lived in that area around central Mexico, including the Aztecs, they used things like onyx and calcite and carved them, because they're softer minerals, into things like bowls and cups and things like that. So definitely a cool historical aspect. Metaphysically speaking, yellow calcite, lots of sun energy, a very happy stone, very energetic stone. It's very cool. Alrighty, we're going to move on to our next one here. Here's another piece of yellow calcite. It almost looks like a big chunk of lemon. Now this specimen here is $22. And these are some pretty, beefy specimens here. They're pretty hefty, pretty large. They transmit a lot of light, so light can just shine right through it, making them very pretty. Yeah, these guys are just absolutely beautiful. We have all sorts of calcites. We have green calcite. I think we call it like green apple calcite. It has like some streaks of red and green in it. Blue calcite, yellow calcite, type of calcite called zebra calcite, which is basically just calcite that has a bunch of layers in it that are all black and white, kind of neat and stripy. So very cool. All right, we're going to move on to our next specimen here. So those are our yellow calcites, or champagne calcites as we like to call them. And next, I think I'm going to show some bornite. So this is something you guys might have seen like in a gift shop somewhere. It's a fairly common mineral. I mean, common in the sense that there's quite a bit of it if you know where to look for it. But this stuff is also known as peacock ore. And I'll show you guys a couple pieces of it here. So we're currently selling these guys for $12 each. And bornite, or peacock ore, has a bunch of colors in it. Once you see it, you'll be like, oh, I know exactly what that is. I've seen that before in a gift shop. Take a look at this. Look at all those colors in there. Isn't that cool? So that's why they call it peacock ore. There's so many colors. It's like a peacock feather. Now, you may notice that it's quite a little like dirty. See, look at that. So this is an iron mineral, and iron minerals tend to decompose a lot quicker than other minerals. So they tend to have kind of like a that kind of bit of an effect. So the iron will actually kind of rub off on different surfaces. If you scrape this against concrete, for example, you'd see this dark kind of stripe. In fact, that's actually a way to test what kind of mineral you have, is by doing a streak test. So geologists, what we'll do is we will take a rock or a mineral or a sample and put it against a piece of ceramic or glass or some other piece of material that has a known hardness. And if we know how hard that thing is, and what we can do is we can basically measure how hard other minerals are compared to this plate. So if each material on the planet has a known density, a known hardness. So if we don't know what something is, we can do some tests like that, some basic simple tests, and figure out what it is. But just take a look at the colors in that. Isn't that just gorgeous? So you may look at this and say, okay, well, we have like, yellows, blues, purples, maybe some greens. The greens are a lot more rare. Most people tend to see it as just, a rainbow of colors, but each color is a bit rare because this is kind of like a form of oxidation. Generally, I mean, you would still see these colors inside the stone itself, but generally the more colorful parts are going to be on the surface of the stone. Again, these are all $12 each. I'm going to show you guys kind of another kind of more basic one. So this one has a lot more blue. So notice how the color is definitely like the consistency definitely varies from stone to stone. And you may notice too that this is actually kind of like a rougher rock, right? So just like iron deposits or any other metallurgist deposit, that's just a fancy word for metal ore, basically it forms in veins. So it'll form within these structures called dikes, which will be filled with oftentimes quartz crystal. And inside these dikes, there'll be like cracks and crevices and vesicles, and superheated hydrothermal water will rush through these geologic structures and basically deposit things like this. Kind of a neat little thing. So definitely, as you can see, the color does vary. This is a lot more blue than the last one. If we move on to our next one here, this one is a little more kind of like purple, and we can even see the iron pyrite. So bornite forms alongside iron pyrite. This is generally how you'll see it, how you'll find it. So the yellow kind of like lighter, shiny metal there, that is just iron pyrite. And the bornite is your colorful stuff. So that's the really pretty stuff. That's what you want. Now, as you can probably imagine, you know, metaphysically speaking, anything with a lot of color is going to be very, you know, very kind of like energetic stone, very happy. It could mean a lot of different things. Generally, things like this help with grounding and creativity. And all of these guys come from Chile. So you're going to find, and that does actually make sense because you find a lot of metallurgist ore deposits on the boundaries of big mountain belts. For example, the Andes, which are, you know, just the base of the Andes is in Chile. Very cool. Alrighty. Move on to our next one here. This is a bit more colorful. As we can see, we have a lot more like brighter yellows and purples here. Very, very cool. The color itself, I mean, it's just, the variety is just beautiful, just amazing. I absolutely love it. Alrighty, we're gonna move on to our next specimen here. Now this one has a little more purple. We even have some quartz in there as well, some quartz and some feldspar. Very cool. This whiter material, that's kind of like a mix of quartz and feldspar, which is where that would be the matrix, which is like the rock that the mineral is found in. So generally you're going to find it in that kind of environment. This one's a lot more blue. And again, these are all $12 each. Great price for these big pieces. You know, just even a size comparison. They're all about the same size. So this is about the size, maybe a bit bigger than a Kennedy 50-cent piece. Maybe everybody is, well, hopefully people know what that is. I think they actually still make those. You can request them at banks. All right, next. This one's very pretty. I'm gonna have to wash my hands after this. Take a look at that. The color in there. This is perfect for like Twitch. Anybody who likes Twitch, this would be a perfect stone for them. Take a look at that. That nice bright purple. The blues. And look at that iridescence, right? As I move the stone, we have different colors popping out, just like a peacock feather. And that nice streak, that nice vein of iron pyrite there, that's just beautiful. Yes. Yeah, Twitchite, yes. Alright, we have a couple more here, and then we'll move on to our next set of specimens here. This one's kind of cool. I actually prefer the lighter colored ones, like the lighter blue bornite specimens, because they're just, I don't know what it is, but they're just really pretty. It's a lot more rare. And see that green right there? That's some really rare kind of like bornite. That's a rare variety. So, and it's $12, right? Pretty good deal. But the lighter blue is just so striking to me. I don't know. I really like it. Alrighty, we're gonna move on to our next grouping of specimens here. With all sorts of stuff. I'm gonna have to put all these away now. Okay. So next, what we're gonna do, I think we'll just show a few of these loose pieces that we have here. So next we have a piece of lapis lazuli. So lapis, right? Lapis is a classic blue mineral. And you're going to find it a lot in environments where there's lots of mountains. So lots of mountains, but not just mountains though. Mountains that have been metamorphically altered. So that requires heat and pressure, movement of rock, squeezing the rock. And what happens is when you start heating rock that's already formed, it changes it on a very small level, like a chemical level. It rearranges how the minerals are aligned in the rock, changes a lot of things. Oftentimes you can have cracks and fissures and faults break through the rock, and those can actually act as conduits to allow things like hydrothermal water to come up through and deposit more minerals. So in this case, we have a mineral, or I should say a rock, called gneiss, and inside we have some lapis. Now, what has happened is that you had some sort of massive granite that has been moved and squeezed and squished, and you realign the minerals, but you also fracture it and break it up, and you intrude things like various chemicals, and you can create something like this, and you've basically completely changed the granite into this sort of weird blue gneiss. So gneiss is just another, it's kind of metamorphic rock. Basically, it's metamorphosed granite or diorite. And lapis lazuli, you're going to find this in mountain ranges. Oftentimes, you can find these things in, historically speaking, you can find a lot of lapis in the Atlas Mountains in the Middle East. And lapis is actually very associated with the Middle East and North Africa. That's actually where this piece comes from. I think it comes from around Pakistan area. And lapis lazuli, historically speaking, has been used for things like paint. So it can be crushed up and used as a pigment. It can be used in sculpture. You can create different sculptures out of it. The Babylonian Empire even used lapis as kind of like a status symbol. So kind of an interesting story. Also, by the way, this piece is $120, so it's a bit more expensive. It's priced on how blue it is. But the Babylonians, what they did was they, lapis was a very rare thing to find, and also it was very hard to mine. It's a hard rock. It's very difficult to get. So if you had lapis or anything made out of lapis, it was like, okay, well, I have that's like having gold, right? It's a big status symbol. It means that you are a very wealthy country or a very wealthy nation. So back then that was very important to people. Well, the Babylonian king at the time decided, well, I'm going to cover all my walls with lapis. But we're bankrupt, so how can we afford lapis? They funded many different wars and all sorts of different things, and they started getting money from the Greeks and loans from other countries. So they were pretty much broke. They could not afford to get lapis. So instead, what they did was they found some other type of blue pigment and created a bunch of blue glazed tiles and covered their walls with that. So to give the kind of impression that they had lapis covering their walls. They were so rich that they had lapis everywhere. That was not the case. They were poor and they didn't have anything. So it was kind of like a ruse to kind of trick people into thinking they had more than what they had. So kind of a neat little historical thing. But take a look at those blues, right? So this is basically classic lapis lazuli. We have veins of quartz running through here with strata of this nice blue lapis lazuli, and some pyrite crystals kind of spotted throughout. That's what you're going to find in lapis. So just a beautiful specimen all around. That is true, yes. Alrighty, we'll move on to our next specimen here. Alright, we got might as well get the amethysts out again. Alright, so we have a bunch of these phantom amethysts. They're really nice. We've had these for a couple shows now. And they're just cool. I really like them. Let me just make sure I get this set up here. Alrighty. Okay. So, we have quite a few of these points here. Most of these points actually have phantoms. I think almost all of them have phantoms. And they also have some hematite crystals as well. So take a look at this specimen here. We got this beautiful amethyst point, and the phantoms are basically growth lines. You can see them as almost like little faint phantom facets within the stone itself. So you might be able to see them if you see like little dark lines like that. See how there's a linear dark line along the edge there? That is some phantoming going on. And so how those form, and for those who have watched our stream before, you've probably heard this quite a few times. Basically, you have a crystal that's forming inside of a rock or a little cavity in the ground, and something changes in the crystal growth pattern, and you end up having something deposited on top of the crystal. Could be some other kind of mineral, could be that the chemicals within the water that are making this crystal form, because you need mineral-rich water to form crystals. Maybe the chemicals became imbalanced, or they changed somehow, making them darker or whatever. So for a period of time, something changed in this crystal's growth. In this case, more iron was probably introduced, and maybe the iron content was off and on, kind of maybe spotty, and created this gorgeous kind of clear amethyst point with a tiny cap of this iron-rich purple here. So you need iron ions to create this kind of color. So depending on the amount of iron you have, you could have something like, citrine, for example, or you could have amethyst. You could have a darker amethyst or a darker citrine. Really depends. But it's kind of neat. Now, all of these guys here, we're selling these for $12 each, so not a bad price for a big point like these. This next point we're going to show, this one has some more kind of like interesting inclusions. So we have maybe some hematite or manganese crystals. Those are those dark and kind of dark orange or red crystals kind of like floating in there. And as we can see, we see those little striations in the facet, those lines, those linear lines. Those are your phantoms. So those are just growth lines. That's all they are. But they look spectacular. They're beautiful. Phantoming is pretty common in amethyst and citrine. But in the mineral world as a whole, phantoms are pretty uncommon. So, when you see one, it's like really striking, for sure. You're definitely not going to find something like this at a gift shop. That's for sure. Yeah, take a look at those phantoms in there, and you can really see the phantoming really well in this. Yeah, very beautiful. Wow. Yeah, I just really love this stuff. Alrighty, we'll move on to our next one here. This one has some nice, kind of interesting hematite crystals kind of going on here. Now look at that. Now notice how the hematite crystals are just found in a certain layer, right? They're not like throughout the crystal. They're kind of like just on the top. And again, why is that? That's because of those growth lines. Something changed recently in the crystal's history, or geologically recent, so it could be a course of a couple 100,000 to a couple million years. And maybe there was a ton of iron. So much iron, in fact, that it deposited out hematite. So I mean, just do a kind of a slow kind of rotation here of this, so you guys can see this, and take a look at all those iron crystals. Really, really pretty. Yeah, I absolutely love these. Yeah, and these are all $12 each. So again, not bad. Now take a look at that. Well, now you may notice too, you know, a lot of these points, just points in general, they're very narrow, and like at the bottom, right? And they kind of bloom out. So the general structure of a point, right? This is what we're going to commonly see. We're going to see the root of the crystal, which is down here, just like a tooth, right? You have the root of the tooth, and you have the crown of the tooth. So this is your root of the crystal. That's the crown of the crystal. The point is an apex or a termination. It's a terminus. So it's basically where all the facets meet. So if I have lots of faceting, we have some faceting on the top here. So those are your flat crystal surfaces. These on the bottom would not be considered facets. They're not flat crystal surfaces. We have one termination. If we had two terminations, meaning that we had a termination here and a termination here, that means the whole thing is faceted. And there are quite a few crystals that form like that, double terminations. Just kind of interesting. So as I'm describing the piece, it's kind of good to know like what I'm talking about, like where, like, oh yeah, the root of the crystal right here. So usually, just like teeth can crowd, right? So can crystal points. So for example, you can actually have a whole cluster of these guys, and they're all squeezing against each other, and they're forcing each other kind of like spread out. And whichever crystal point grows the fastest, that will be the one that overtakes the rest, and the other tiny points will either get reabsorbed into the crystalline matrix, or they will just kind of get stuck. And so oftentimes they'll get stuck and kind of get crammed underneath all these points. And once they fill in the space that they have available, they stop growing. They just stop. So that's kind of how they form. And that's why they're kind of narrow at the root and wide at the crown. Now this specimen here is really pretty. We have a nice kind of light lavender color, really pretty coloration here with some nice hematite crystals. And look at that, they're all like lined up there. Seeing that is really cool. As a geologist, it's like, okay, that's really neat. You don't really see like that really, striking, defined deposit there quite often in phantoms. It's just really neat. So it's interesting. We kind of have like a amethyst phantom, right? Which has these nice purple lines in it. We can even see those lines right there. But we also have a hematite phantom. And that hematite phantom, as you can see, if you look closely at this plane here, this facet, that hematite is literally trapped within the crystal, and there's a crystalline layer deposited right on top of it. That's really cool. So yeah, that's what kind of makes these guys special. They're just really neat. Now, an interesting fact about amethyst, almost all the amethyst mined in the world comes from Brazil. That doesn't mean you can't find it anywhere else. You can find amethyst in the United States, anywhere in North America. You can find it in India. You can find it in China, Australia. You can find it all over the place. but the most deposits are in Brazil, the largest deposits of amethyst. And that really, you find amethyst a lot where you have volcanism, so, or iron-rich rocks. Since amethyst and citrine are basically iron minerals, they have, you know, iron ions within them. You need iron to form them. So wherever you're going to find iron, you're probably going to find amethyst. Or if you find rocks like basalt or any kind of rhyolite, those are iron-rich, heavy mineral-rich rocks. If you see any of those on the surface, you probably could have some amethyst in there. For example, there's in Mexico, there is the Sonoran volcanic range, and there's a bunch of just craters all over the place. Lots of rhyolite and basalt deposits, and you can find amethyst deposited within the little vesicles within the rock of amethyst. So that would be the place to find it. So again, this piece here really cool. We have kind of like, you know, some more purple, you know, phantoms going on here, but we also have these really interesting iron crystals that are like basically on the top surface layer here, which is really neat to see. Very cool. Again, these are all $12 each. Not bad for some cool phantom points. There's another one right here. This one's really cool. You have these really dark phantoms. Now, it could be iron making that happen. There could be some manganese in there. And manganese is a very dark mineral, so you could have some of that going on. So it really depends. The only real way to really tell is just to put it in a some sort of X-ray refraction machine. Basically, you'd have to dissolve this in an acid, or a piece of it in acid, and fire X-rays at it, and you can actually figure out what an object is made out of by doing that. Take like a sample of it. Sadly, I don't have one of those. They're tens of thousands of dollars. I wish I had one. I think you can actually get a tabletop one for like $6,000, which isn't that bad considering science equipment, how expensive it is. But some of these machines are like the size of a room. Absolutely massive. We'll move on to our next one here. Probably going to show a few more and then move on to our next series here. Look at that. This is kind of cool. It's kind of shaped like a heart. And it's kind of neat. You have this really clear amethyst here. I mean, you can even see my finger on the other side. That's another nice thing about these phantoms. The roots of the crystals tend to be very opaque, but with these points, they're very translucent. They have a lot of light coming through. So that's not too common, which is pretty neat. Then we have this kind of neat little point at the top with some phantoming going on. Very, very cool and pretty. Very cool. Alrighty, we're going to move on to our next grouping of specimens here. Got a lot of stuff to show today. Now, just as a reminder, if you guys see something on the stream that you like, just drop a comment in the chat or in the comment section wherever you're watching us on. Currently, we're streaming to Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Alrighty, so this next specimen here, it's kind of neat. We have a $58 piece of grape chalcedony. Now, grape chalcedony is a bit more rare, especially nowadays. I remember when this stuff was first coming on the market, and there was quite a bit of it. This stuff used to be really cheap, actually, and now you can't find it anymore. Basically the deposits have been fairly pretty much exhausted. There's hardly any places that actually have this anymore. So whenever you find it, it's very expensive. They sell it like, you know, I think last time I checked the price, it's like $100. Could be, well, no, I think it's in the gram range. So I'd say like maybe I don't know. I'd have to check. It could be like 35 to $80 a gram. I don't know. Um, there's tables online where you can find out that information, and they change all the time. It really depends on like what's on the market and what's being deposited, what's being found. So as you can see, grape chalcedony, it's called that because we got all these little, botryoidal things going on here. We have these little grapes, right? They kind of look like little purple grapes. And so the classic, just kind of grape chalcedony, we have this very fine silica quartz druzy, which makes the whole piece just kind of glitter in the light, makes it sort of like iridescent almost. And the kind of what kind of makes these more rare is if you have a lot of these little grapes or little vesicles, botryoidal vesicles, with that druzy. Now notice that kind of sparkle in there. That's what you really want to see. There's a lot of common chalcedony that has some, but normally if you find this stuff, it's going to be so fine that you wouldn't see any druzy at all. And of course, you can see it forms in layers or sheets, and it's kind of coating rock, right? So this would have formed in a very large kind of cavity with lots of fractured rocks. So kind of a neat little thing. Now again, this specimen here is $58, so pretty good deal. Very pretty specimen. We even have some tiny grapes in there. Look at that. Now these specimens here, this is probably, I think this is actually one of our, this comes from one of our fine mineral collections. And all of these have an ID card with a box. So anything that's like really expensive like this, generally the more expensive ones are going to be coming from our fine mineral collection. And those ones are like nicely packaged and everything. So, kind of don't need to worry about displaying it, that's for sure. All right, we're going to move on to our next specimen here. So we got a tiny flat here of all sorts of stuff. We have some larger phantom amethyst points, so I think I'll look at those first, since we looked at those earlier. So these are all from Namibia. And as you can see, the color is quite a bit lighter, right? So we have some phantoming going on in there. Very, very light. The specimen here is $14. In fact, these both are. We have two of them. And they're a bit larger as well than the other ones. So as you can see, the crown is much wider than the other variety that we had. It's still very, very beautiful. All right, next we're going to look at our second phantom amethyst. Now, this one has a lot more points. Very, very pretty. $14. Lots of phantoms in there. Let's see if we can get a closer look at some of them. Yeah, there we go. So it's a very, very thin phantom. It's probably why the color is so light too. That does make sense. So it looks like it's just right on the surface. It looks like there's a greater deposit of it here on this side than the other side of the specimen. I mean, just take a look at those phantoms. As I turn the crystal, look how that little dark line, it's like just outlined with beautiful purple. Gorgeous. And this one is also shaped like a heart. Very cool. Alrighty, next we're going to show some pyrite clusters from Spain. These guys are really cool. These are cubic pyrite specimens in matrix. Now, again, yes, these are natural. These form like this. So a lot of people, we actually have loose pyrite cubes, and I kind of like, displaying those first and ask people, what do you think this is like? Do you think this is real? What do you think? And most people say no, and you know, some people are like, oh no, it's real. It is real. And basically, I show them the loose cube, and then I show them the cube in the matrix. And having both displayed next to each other kind of gives a real perspective of, wow, these are actually found like this in nature. Really cool. So they form in limestone within Spain. And the pyrite tends to form when you have, it's an iron sulfide mineral, and you tend to have this kind of stuff form where you have anything like any kind of sulfur and iron deposited. So you can find this a lot by, you know, in volcanic kind of ranges. You can find it a lot in things like limestone, because when you have decaying sea life, for example, you could have like seaweed or plants or fish or whatever. When those things get buried, they decompose, and they have a lot of sulfur that they're outgassing and all sorts of other stuff. And if they're being decomposed in really deep water that has hardly any oxygen, the iron within those creatures will kind of collect and start to compress together into these nodules, these little concentrations or concretions of iron, and turn into kind of like an iron pyrite. And over the course of a couple million of years, and you know, maybe some heat and pressure, you're going to form something like this. And cubes, pyrite cubes, those are that's the first shape. The cube is the first shape in the heat index for crystallization of iron pyrite. So the first shape that you're going to have is a cube. To make iron crystals, you need lots of heat. So generally, you're going to have really high temperatures. So high, in fact, that you may not even have a low enough temperature to form a cube. So that makes these rare. You definitely don't see these a lot. So all these guys are $26 each, and they're all from Spain. Really pretty, almost like a mirror-like finish on those. Really, really gorgeous. So these are nice kind of like desk pieces or tabletop pieces for your altar. If you want a cool piece for your desk. Metaphysically speaking, iron pyrite is great for grounding. Kind of a heavy, dense stone. Yeah, these are just really pretty. And they form in all different kinds of sizes. You can find them as small as, well, I should even say smaller than a pea. Like, God, smaller than that. Like, I've seen them as small as like about the size of an ant, to the size of like a softball. Like they can range in size, and oftentimes they'll be clustered together, so you'll have cubes on cubes on cubes. Kind of a really neat thing. So we've got 6 of these in the series here we're going to show today. Each one is a little bit different, but it's basically the same thing. It's just a matrix rock with the iron crystal embedded. And these are just really neat. Yeah, again, these are $26 each from Spain. Now, the mine, like where these come from, trying to get these out of the rock that they're in is oftentimes very difficult. So, looking at limestone, limestone's a very kind of, it's a lighter rock for sure, but it's very dense. There's not a lot of like planes that you can like cleave it at. So when you're hitting it, you just kind of pummel it and soften the outside. It's very hard to break apart. To break it apart, really, you need lots of sledgehammers and heavy hammers to kind of fracture it. So basically, you have a mine or a quarry. These are quarried out in big boulders or big blocks, and 10 miners will go at it with sledgehammers and pickaxes and just like break it apart. And as it's being broken apart, the iron crystal has a different density than the rock, So what will happen is that as you're hitting this rock that this is in, it vibrates the rock, and it will start to loosen the crystal inside because of that density difference. And oftentimes, because of the density difference, the weakest point of the rock is where these crystals are, because the density is different. So if you hit the boulder enough times, it'll fracture along those lines, those veins of where you're going to find these guys, and it'll split apart, and there you go. You'll find your pyrite cubes. Because of that density difference, though, if you rattle the rock enough, right when you break it apart, sometimes these guys will just pop right out. They'll fly out in every direction. Whenever you're mining any kind of hard rock and you're looking for a mineral deposit, that's something to kind of be wary of. Definitely you're going to find that everything is going to want to fly out. So, yeah, no, these guys are pretty neat. This one even has kind of a little kind of neat, fine iron sort of druzy on the surface right at the bottom. See that sparkle? It's kind of cool. Right, this is our last one. And some of these specimens actually have flat bottoms, right? So you can put it on a desk really nicely. Now I'd say like cubic pyrite is also one of your like classic minerals. Like this is something that if you're a mineral collector, having something like this is like, standard. So definitely very cool. All right, I'm gonna move on to our next specimen here. I think because of the nature of this next specimen, I'm gonna show it first, since it's right after the iron. So, this next specimen I'm actually going to handle with a glove. Not because it's toxic or anything. I guess it is kind of toxic. Just don't eat it. You can definitely handle it with your hands. Just make sure to wash your hands afterwards. This is a specimen of galena, and galena is lead ore. So it's very heavy. Lead is very heavy. And so this is also very heavy. It's also very, kind of dirty. It gets on everything. So last time I handled this, I got just galena dust all over my hands, and I kind of don't like that. So we're just gonna handle it with a glove. So as we can see, this is galena. Galena is a cubic mineral, so we have lots of cubic structures going on. This specimen here is from Mexico, and as we can see, the color, right? It's another metallic mineral. Metallic minerals are my favorite. And the color is kind of like a steel blue, very, very light steel blue. And that's just kind of classic for these guys. Oftentimes you're going to find lead deposits around iron ore deposits. So you'll find pyrite and galena together quite often in the mineral world. Now, finding a massive lead deposit like this is a bit more rare. So when you find something like this, it's usually going to be a large mine that's some mining corporation owns it. No one can mine on it. So this actually comes from a family-owned mine, which is nice, right outside of Durango. So it's a bit better. Just take a look at that. I mean, I just think these are pretty. Now this specimen here is $45. $45 for a big piece of galena like this is a really good deal. Like I said, I really love metallic ores, metallic minerals. Definitely my favorite. Very pretty, especially in the sunlight. Galena being, lead, being very heavy. It's a very grounding mineral. So metaphysically, if you're looking for that kind of thing, if you want to be kind of grounded back down to earth, get some of this. Now, lead has a lot of interesting qualities, right? It's very good at blocking radiation. So lead is used in a lot of protective clothing within nuclear power plants, for example. During the Chernobyl disaster, when the nuclear power plant had a meltdown. All the trucks and crews and cleaning equipment, everything was covered in lead because of its that property it has. Just a very neat mineral. Alrighty. We're just gonna move on here to our next specimen. So next we have this beautiful smoky quartz point from Arkansas. It's from the Coleman mine. $48 for this guy. Not a bad price. And we have some phantoming as well going on in there, as you can see. Look at that. Very pretty. So phantoming is definitely common in the mineral world, but you don't see it too often. Very pretty stuff. You usually have smoky quartz form where you have pockets of quartz that have been irradiated. So either heated by radiation or heat from the sun or heat from the inner earth. You can also create your own smoky quartz by putting it in a big oven. So you can heat it up and cook it yourself. So that's also another thing people do. This is natural though, natural quartz, smoky quartz. And this smoky quartz comes from the Coleman mine. The Coleman mine is a world famous quartz crystal mine, and that's where most of our quartz specimens actually come from. And some of the best quality quartz, the clearest quartz, is found there in the Arkansas quartz belt. The mine where this comes from is actually really cool. They actually have clusters that are about the size of like a car or a living room, and they just, get these things out of the ground with mattresses for padding and big cranes, and those things go for millions of dollars. It's just very, very cool what they do. So we get a lot of our quartz specimens from them, and it's excellent quality quartz. Like, for example, the quartz crystals found there are used a lot in various electronics. You can find them, historically speaking, you can find them being used in various sights and lasers, especially in the military. So I don't know if the Coleman mine has contracts with them or not, but historically speaking, the quartz from the Arkansas quartz belt has been used for that kind of thing. So kind of neat. Now what's interesting about this quartz, right, is that it's usually smoky quartz. It's either going to be so light that you can see through it, or it's going to be very dark and you can't see through it at all. This is kind of like the best of both worlds. We can actually see right through it, but it's just dark enough to be like really smoky. So very, very neat. All right, going to move on to our next grouping of specimens here. So next we have these really cool pyrite cubes. We have all sorts of these guys. I'm just going to grab a handful because, they're just neat. So we actually have these really pretty, really kind of like aqua blue, very pretty aqua blue fluorite octahedrons. And this blue color is not too common, in octahedrons at least. So these are very, very pretty. Just gonna kind of give you guys kind of a glance at. There's just a handful in general. So this is kind of like how big they are size-wise. So we have all sorts of different colors, right? Clear fluorite is the rarest kind of fluorite. I've seen. We actually have, I think, one clear fluorite cube octahedron, and it's, oh god, I think it's like $45 or $48. Forget. But generally you can see those kinds of things going for a couple $100. They're a lot more rare. So all of these guys here are $5 each, so not bad. Not a bad price for sure. So as you can see, we got all different kinds of colors. We're going to take a close look at some of them. So I guess look kind of like the purple ones first. So as you can see, got these gorgeous octahedrons here. All right, Lisa. So we got all different kinds here. Would you like all of our purples and blues? As you can see, we even have some phantoming going on as well, which is kind of neat. Now, these deep purples, that's really kind of cool to see. Look at that. Look at that striation there. That's another phantom right there. Got some more purples here as well. The brighter colors are a little more rare. All right, Lisa, we'll get 2 of those for you. Now the blues are definitely more rare than the purples. The most common you're gonna find is green fluorite, and we'll just go up on scale here from rarity, right? So most common, we have green, then we have purple, and then we have blue, and then we have yellow and white or clear, and then there's more kind of interesting varieties like watermelon fluorite, which is pink and green. That's really cool. So, and just look at the this. It's like holding like a little, I don't know, some sort of like a tiny little piece of a glacier in your hand. It's just really pretty. This next one is absolutely gorgeous too. It's a lot darker of a blue, more striking. And these blues are definitely more rare. Not as rare as the clear and the yellow though. The yellow is pretty cool. You know, it's kind of sad that, you know, I mean, as a geologist, I think that there's all sorts of rocks that most people think are just ugly looking. I love them. Like a piece of granite is like, oh my god. Maybe not, but I like all sorts of rocks. And clear fluorite is just not striking to people because it has no color. So it's only, I mean, it's not the prettiest. I mean, you know, take a look at this, right? It has a little bit of green in it, but I think the only cool thing about this is that you have like a kind of a plane here where it's you have green and then you have like white or clear, but it's pretty colorless. So not a lot of people, just common rock buyers, will buy them, but a mineral collector that knows that the true value of these will buy these. So for $5 a piece, it's a very good deal. Another blue one. This one's really cool. This one even has like a little stripe of purple in there. That's just really gorgeous. Yeah, so, you know, a lot of these, you know, blue ones and the yellows and those tend to go a lot quicker than, you know, the clear ones, obviously. So, a couple more here. This one's a little more opaque. So kind of an interesting fluorite octahedron. Generally speaking, these are a lot more common. It's much more common to find opaque fluorite than it is to find translucent fluorite. So just to kind of give you guys an idea. That translucency, in general, we call that gemminess. So if something is gemmy, it has very kind of like jello-like, gem-like things kind of in it. So if something is gemmy, it's going to have very translucent crystals. You know, you can see right through them. This is a very kind of a deeper, darker purple. Looks like a black. Very pretty. So that gemminess, though, just in general, is a lot more difficult to find. That one's cool. You have blue and purple right in the middle. That's really pretty. Wow. Yeah, and at $5 each, it's just a pretty good deal. All right, so I'm gonna move on to our next kind of grouping here of specimens. Alrighty, so got one box taken care of. Now we're gonna move on to our next box. Alrighty, so what do we have here? I think we'll go on to this flat. We have some handmade goods in here. So besides having crystals and all sorts of other things, we do jewelry work. We do lapidary work, so we make things out of rocks. We have, again, like jewelry. We do woodwork, carving, all sorts of stuff. So most of it's mineral oriented. I mean, obviously that's the nature of our business, so I'm gonna keep it that way. But yeah, we have all sorts of stuff. So we have some carved gemstone skulls that are really cool. These guys range in price. We have a kind of a series of $25 ones, and then we have these larger ones that are priced at $58. This one's a lighter kind of amethyst. Take a look at that. So these skulls are just really cool. Yeah, if they had some of these in that, you know, that awesome adventure movie I can't say the name of because we're on Twitch, but it's not so awesome. Probably would have gotten better ratings, I think. But yeah, this nice kind of light amethyst, really pretty. Again, we have some gemminess here. We can see a lot of light kind of coming in there, refracting around. And skulls, just in general, you're gonna have, you're gonna basically like see these a lot in like Spain or Latin America, Mexico, for like Day of the Dead. There's some cultures that are very kind of like, you know, against having skulls or bones around. For example, in China, it's like a taboo to even show any kind of bone. So in a lot of like video games, for example, you'll have bones that are just like, and the game is like literally edited to not have bones in them. If like your character dies, maybe a tombstone pops up or something. So it's interesting to see how different cultures around the earth, you know, handle death and their interpretation of it. I think these are really cool. So either as a altarpiece or as a piece to just put on your desk as a cool kind of ornament, you know, a paperweight. These are really neat. So again, all these large ones, they're all $58 each. And we got this, so that was our amethyst one. Now we have our pink quartz one. So very kind of cool. Same style though. And all of our skulls, they're made by a family in Mexico, and we get a lot of stuff from them. So we tend to deal with a lot of family-owned mines and things like that. You know, we get a lot of various minerals from Mexico from them. They make a lot of carved items. For example, these. Very cool. And again, this guy right here, $58 for these large skulls. The material that this is a pink quartz from Mexico. Very cool. All right, we're going to move on to our next one here. It's a tiger's eye skull. And generally, these have been carved to kind of accentuate the various features of the mineral. So, for example, you know, we have these layers of tiger's eye that are, so the skull is basically carved so the layer will take over a certain hemisphere of the skull. Tiger's eye, just in general, very pretty stone, as you can see. It has a lot of stratoyance. There's lots of light play. Very pretty stone for sure. Again, $58 for this guy. Another beautiful skull. And these definitely, you know, range in size and price. These are probably the largest ones that we have. And then all of our small ones tend to be about the same size as well. So, for example, we have this guy. This is a type of agate. Chalcedony in there as well. So these smaller skulls, as you can see, the price, a bit cheaper, $25. Definitely a lot smaller. And we have some nice layering going on in here, some strata. So those nice little lines of striations. Very cool. I just like how these are carved too. Like you have this one just long kind of stripe where the teeth are. That's really neat. All right, next we got some moss agate. Take a look at that. This moss agate is really pretty. Let's see if I can actually get a light to shine through it. It'll be a lot more pretty. See if this shows up well. All right, so let's get two hands here. Our trusty light here. As you can see, I mean, take a look at that. So it's called moss agate for definitely this reason. All those green inclusions in there, they're chlorite inclusions, which is a green mineral. And it almost looks like moss inside the stone, doesn't it? Very neat. All right, so our last one here, our last skull in the series, is a hematite skull. We got some metallic hematite. Very pretty. Very pretty stuff. Yeah, I really like this stuff. It's very cool. Yeah, it's just such a grounding stone too. And definitely can feel that weight. I mean, being in hematite, being an iron mineral, right? Heavy. Not as heavy as lead, but still pretty heavy. Again, $25 for these guys. Hand carved stones, some skulls, very cool stuff. All right, so going to move on to our next series here. So next, I think we're going to look at this smoky quartz specimen from Arkansas. Yet another one. Take a look at this. We have this nice long point here. Very cool, very pretty. So this guy here is $89. We have kind of an interesting sort of cluster here of all different points just pointing in different directions. Pretty neat. Just take a look at that that light refraction there. Look at that light index. Look how much light is let into the stone. That is really cool. Very, very cool. So these specimens, right, these clusters, they're all different kinds of sizes and shapes. You know, this is obviously one of our larger ones. We have smoky quartz clusters that are pretty dang big, so the sky is the limit. if there's something that, you know, we have some customers that are, you know, wanting like a huge, we have cathedrals, amethyst cathedrals as well, but if you're looking for like something that's really large, we can actually, you know, do a custom order and, you know, talk to some various mine owners that we know and get a kind of a deal set up. So if you're looking for a massive car-sized quartz cluster that is hundreds of thousands of dollars, we could get a hold of that for you. Typically, we don't have a lot of customers like that, so but, you know, again, the sky is the limit, right? So, but yeah, these are really cool. I really like this specimen here because you have this nice long point here. Generally speaking, the Arkansas quartz, finding these large, long points is a little more rare. It's not, like, common. So, you know, really just depends. So next we're going to show a quartz point, clear quartz point. This one's really cool because it's been kind of cleaved or broken like halfway through the point, and the fracture actually looks like a interesting sort of sea or ocean. So this guy here is $82. As you can see, it's a pretty large point, right? Typically, if you're going to be like in a metaphysical shop or a crystal shop, you're going to find this, like, you know, priced at and maybe like $200 or something like that. So you know, we're able to offer low prices, actually right above wholesale, because we're direct from the mine source. We don't buy from middlemen, and we don't upsell. So yeah, actually one of the reasons why I started this business and in the first place. People just overcharge for crystals. Not cool. So as we can see, we have this neat kind of like fracture here, and the fracture itself offers a surface for light to reflect off of. So imagine each facet is like a window and a mirror. So if light enters in through these facets, right, each facet being a window, it's going to let light in. All the facets inside the stone, like every single facet, is going to act like a mirror to reflect and refract all that light. So this big fracture here is like a big refraction mirror, and it's just splitting all that light in there. So in the sunlight, you may even be able to see some cool like rainbows in there, that kind of thing. You know, again, that just, it kind of brightens up the stone. So that's why too, if you look through here, you might be able to see that like shininess in there. That's actually the light reflecting off of the side facets. So this is actually fairly clear stuff. But again, you know, facets, they're like mirrors. Very cool. Alrighty, move on to our next box. All sorts of stuff here to show. I think because of the nature of this one, I'm going to show this next. Get it out of the way. So these are some sulfur crystals from Siberia. And sulfur, usually you're going to find this stuff forming around like volcanic vents, that kind of thing. Now, sulfur crystals are like, they're not water resistant. So if you do buy one of these, do not put it outside, it will fall apart. And do not put it in water, it will also dissolve. So yeah, let's just kind of look at some of these. So sulfur in general, it's a very yellow element, so the crystals are going to be very bright yellow, very bright. So as we can see, it kind of forms in this kind of very light pumicey sort of rock. And we have our nice sulfur right here as well in concentrate. So the sulfur crystals, imagine that you have this vent. Now, it's kind of, if you've never seen one of these in person, it's hard to explain, but basically a vent is going to be a hole in the ground. And this vent is basically meant to outgas like volcanic gases, water vapor, superheated hydrothermal water, could be the entrance to a hot spring, gas, anything like that. And they're usually like tectonically active, meaning that there's something making the water heat up or making the gas heat up underground and expel out. So on the surface, it's going to be a hole in the ground. The hole could, you know, you could have geysers, for example, shooting out water every so often once the pressure builds up. Now, if you have water that is water vapor that is mineral rich, you're going to have, you know, things like sulfur gas being dissolved in the, like sulfur dioxide, for example, dissolved in the water. And as the water comes up, it's going to slowly over time kind of deposit sulfur crystals on the like inside rim of this hole, this cavity in the ground. And the hole is like a vent; it just vents out air or water vapor. So over the course of, you know, hundreds, thousands of years, thick layers of these sulfur crystals will build up on the interior surface of these vents. And in the Kuril Mountains and parts of Siberia, as well as parts of the Aleutian Islands, you'll find a lot of these vents, and you can go up to them very carefully with a mask and harvest some of these guys. So they're like fairly common, but they're very unstable at Earth's surface. Like I said, they dissolve in water, they like to fall apart, that kind of thing. And then also too, I guess I should say the price, all these are $38. So not a bad price for an interesting sulfur specimen. These are specimens that you'd want to have like on your shelf somewhere. So, you know, don't put it outside in the rain, obviously, and don't put it in your bathroom, but put it on your shelf in the living room or something. Put it, you know, in your mineral collection. You know, and also too, you know, $38 for these guys, that's a pretty good deal. So, you know, generally, I'll give you guys an idea. Here in San Diego, where we're based, there is a rock shop that is pretty well known, and it's in a very well known part of town, and it's in a historic district of town, actually, in San Diego. And they're kind of like a gift shop, sort of a rock and mineral gift shop. And everything there is ridiculously overpriced. Last time I went there, I will kind of give you guys an example. We have ammonite fossils, and we were selling our small ones, which are about the size of a softball. We were selling those for like $12 each, and literally the same exact thing from Morocco being sold in that gift shop. Between $38 to $48. So just kind of give you guys an idea of what people charge for this kind of stuff, which I think is ridiculous. It just plays on people's naivety, you know. People are just naive and they just don't know. So really is a shame. Now, these sulfur crystals, the yellow color, metaphysically, you know, you're gonna look at lots of like sun energy, lots of fire energy, especially, you know, for, you know, considering how they formed, right? So, and some of these guys are going to be a little more, you know, brighter and more sparkly, that kind of thing. Some of these are going to, like, the surface is going to be a little dull, and because it's a water soluble mineral, if you expose it to fog or you know, water vapor of any kind, morning dew, that kind of thing, it will dissolve. So keep it in a dry place if you buy some. And definitely, again, this is one of those common, like, must-have pieces for like a mineral collector. If you have a mineral collection at home and you don't have a piece of sulfur, great deal. Just get a piece. Definitely something to add to your mineral kit. Just take a look at all those facets. Let's see if we can get a closer look at some of these crystals here. Now, seeing very translucent, sulfur crystals like this is also very uncommon because of the soluble nature of it. It likes to just kind of decompose. So, again, these are all $38. Now, this one here is just kind of a larger, kind of massive chunk of sulfur. Got some crystal points there as well. Now, kind of an interesting fact, this sulfur is Pacific Rim created sulfur, so it's associated with the Pacific Ring of Fire. So considering, like, okay, for example, where this stuff is found, the Aleutian Islands, that's like the northern sector of the Ring of Fire, the Pacific Ring of Fire. And you have the Kuril Mountains in Siberia, northern Siberia, again, northwestern portion of the Pacific Ring of Fire. So, kind of a neat little fact. Alrighty, I'm going to show one more here. Actually, I think two more. Why not? So this is our longest sulfur cluster. Just a kind of a long bar of it. This might be kind of nice as like a display piece, I think, for somebody. Yeah, just really cool stuff. Now that dark mineralization there, that's probably manganese. So, and again, look at that. We have that, fine pumice. So this is the outer layer or cake of the vents. Kind of like a hardened sort of volcanic ash. Yeah, so, welcome back. Yeah, these sulfur crystals are really cool. Last one I'm going to show here is going to be kind of like one of our larger pieces. This one's actually really neat. So I'm going to show the back first. The back has like some sort of veins of sulfur crystals. We look closely, we have some like interesting kind of sparkly grains in there. Almost looks like a star field, how they just sort of light up. It's very cool. And if we flip it around, look at that. Really pretty stuff. Yeah, just love this stuff. Now, I mean, I love like metallic minerals, but things like this are just really so striking and really cool, I just like them. Alrighty, we're going to move on to our next grouping here. Again, those were all $38. And just as a friendly reminder, if you see something on the stream that you would like, put it in the comment section or the chat below. Let us know that you want that thing and we'll get it to you. And if you're watching this as a pre-recorded video on demand, you can always just put a comment or message us anyways and say, hey, is that mineral from like 10 minutes and 38 seconds still available? All of these are pre-recorded and uploaded to YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, so you can look through all those, and we have all sorts of minerals that we've showcased on there. So very, very cool. But yeah, if you see anything on there that you like, just shoot us a message or a comment on our YouTube page, and we'll just our YouTube channel, and we'll just let you know. We'll hook you up. let you know if it's still available. So next we have some red quartz. So red quartz is simply just, quartz crystal with iron oxide on the outside. So kind of like a thin layer of iron-rich deposits, more like rust, really, or earthy hematite. So it gives the appearance that the quartz is red. It's not red throughout, it just kind of has like a red layer on top of it. A lot of these come from like the Middle East, places that are very like very dry and deserty. You'll tend to see a lot of these kind of clusters. This specimen here is $58. So very, very cool. These are, I think these should be from Morocco. So as we can see on the inside there, we can see that it's clear quartz. It's white quartz, regular old quartz. And then we have these kind of like interesting like deposits of iron. So again, you're going to find that kind of stuff in volcanic ranges, places where there's lots of iron. There's, of course, in Africa, there's many deposits of the famous banded iron formation. So you're going to have lots of iron deposits in and around Africa. So Morocco is no different. You're going to find a lot of iron-rich minerals there as well. So again, the specimen here is $58. The next red quartz specimen we're going to show is this kind of larger, longer piece. Now, red quartz, it's a bit more expensive because of its rarity. There's not a lot of it. So, again, we can see that it is, clear quartz. But look at that. This striking difference here. We have like kind of a white or, clear quartz on the bottom and a red quartz on top. That contrast is amazing. So seeing that kind of thing in minerals is really cool. This even has a bit of a heavier deposit of iron on the surface, so that kind of makes it a little more red. Let's kind of like take a close city view here of the points. We got all sorts of points here. Look at that. Yeah, these are really cool. A couple of these are pretty translucent as well. Again, this piece here, $85. So definitely like not the cheapest specimen in the world, but just really cool. What's kind of neat too, we have this one kind of point up here that was broken, and we can see too that it's like all clear on the inside and just red on the outside. So just seeing that contrast there is really pretty. And this specimen here is quite large, so yeah, very, very cool. Alrighty. So our next one here is a bit of a lighter red quartz. This is a $115 cluster, but it's massive. So the coloration is not as intense as the other ones. Okay, so as you can see, it's a bit lighter. But look at that. I mean, this is like a cactus quartz, really. It's just very pointy, lots of little points everywhere. Imagine. People think walking on a Lego piece in the middle of the night is painful. Imagine walking on this in the middle of the night. Absolutely, oh no, I don't want to think about that. You just have nubs at the end of it, just no feet, just nothing. The quartz would just eat you. This is just devastating. Now, as you can see, we have this interesting kind of layer here. So this surface here, that is the surface of a quartz dike. So that would be the outside kind of like layer of the dike. Again, a dike is a geologic structure where you have a fracture or a crevice that's been filled in with some other kind of material, oftentimes quartz. And you're going to find a lot of your metals and your ores and your mineral deposits within these structures. You might hear of like, oh, there's a gold miner in the hills that's mining for veins of gold, or veins, right? Veins are that's just another name for the metal ore running through the rock. They look like little veins, like in your body. So it's just veins of metal or some kind of mineral. So when those veins are empty and they're not filled in with something, they create these cavities, these things called bugs, which are just little holes, these crevices. And it creates like this, there's this cavity here, right? So what happens is that it leaves room for crystals to form. So you have these open cavities where you'll have crystal formation, which is kind of neat. So this cluster here, as you can see, it's fairly large. It's one of our I think actually it is our largest piece of red quartz. I mean, it's just absolutely massive, really pretty. This would be a nice piece for an altar or a nice piece for your entryway, that kind of thing. Just gorgeous. All right. So we got one more that we're going to show. This piece is a bit cheaper. This one's $89. So this one, a lot of really interesting red quartz points here. So we have lots of like points that have these red tips. Now that is really interesting. Take a look at that. So the rest of the point is pretty clear. We have some iron deposit, but the surface, like the I guess the crown of the point, is just coated with iron oxide. Very, very cool. So this specimen here is $89. The back is kind of neat too. Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, the light play is really nice. When you have lots of facets, it's like a disco ball. In the middle of the night, you can get like a flashlight and just shine a light at a crystal like this, lots of facets, and the light will just reflect off each facet and just light up your room like a disco ball. Really neat. Alrighty, so gonna move on to our next grouping here, and let's see here. Alright, so we got some epidote. Now these specimens here, the next grouping is I believe from Peru. So we have quite a few of these here in this series. Now epidote is a type of ultramafic mineral. So you're going to find this, the chemicals that are used to produce this, they only form under the crust. So you rarely see this kind of stuff. It's a very dense mineral, and it's very green. It's very one of the characteristics of it. So we have a lot of these specimens here. I'm just going to show a couple of them. These are all $12 each from Peru. And these are just pretty striking in general. I mean, you got like this really beautiful forest green color. And these are going to be forming a lot in, like your Andes region, lots of mountains, and which makes sense why you'd find them there, because you have the Andes, which are subduction zone related volcanics, so really tall mountains, lots of volcanoes, lots of volcanic activity. So you're going to find things like peridotite. That's another kind of ultramafic mineral that's found below the crust, so in the mantle. So you find things like this in higher pressure regions, usually in veins in the mountains and faults. So ultramafic, what does that mean, right? That just means that mafic in general is just a term for like really heavy, dense rocks that are produced like typically volcanically. You also have igneous rocks. So igneous, fire. of fire. The inner earth is hot, very hot. So, but your ultramafic rocks are going to be your dark, heavy, dense rocks, your mafic rocks. So, basalt is a mafic, very dark and heavy. If it's ultramafic, it forms below the surface of the earth. So, very deep in the ground, generally in the mantle, right? So, the mantle underneath the crust is just filled with green, like putty. It looks like it would look like green putty. It's just a bunch of peridot, basically. And peridot is heavy in iron, so iron rich, and so is epidot. Epidot is just a lesser grade of peridot, and it has some other chemical differences, obviously. So it's not exactly the same, doesn't have the exact same properties, but it is considered an ultramafic mineral with those kinds of origins. So you're generally not going to see it forming on the surface of the earth. You're only going to see it form very deep in the ground. If you do find it on the surface, however, that just means that something happened tectonically to bring it up from the mantle to the surface. So that's, as a geologist, you have to figure out the story of why that is, which is kind of neat. So going back to these guys, these are all $12 each from Peru. These are found in the Andes. We have all sorts of these. Generally, they're all about like the size of between a quarter and a 50-cent piece. So they're generally all the same size. We have some ones that are just massive pieces of epidot. Some are very crystally. So we have lots of little crystal structures here in clusters, like this guy right here. This next one here is a bit more of a massive piece of epidot. So as you can see, so it's just entirely epidot. And what is kind of rare for epidot is to have any gemminess. So any kind of translucent crystals that allow light to enter through, that's pretty uncommon. So seeing that in epidot is that's really nice to see. Yeah, I mean, just take a look at how that green shimmers there. That's what you want to see with high quality epidot. This next piece here is like a bloom, like an epidot bloom. So you may notice the crystal structure, right? It likes to bloom out. It has these little, we call these bloom structures, where you have a bunch of points or crystals that will emanate from a single radius, radial center. So these are all kind of forming from the center and kind of blooming outwards. Yeah, this guy's really pretty too. So the crystal structure itself, it's kind of rod-like, really, and sheet-like. So, I mean, epidot is very unique in that sense. There's not a lot of minerals that have this kind of crystal, call it a crystal habit. That's the habitual formation or crystal shape that the crystal will take. This next one here is really pretty. These actually next two are, look at that. So we have this kind of interesting white deposit here that kind of outlines the crystals. And this is probably the matrix rock, but just take a look at how that light kind of shines through there. I mean, that is really cool. It's like an emerald green color, or maybe a dark olive green. That might be a better term for it. So again, these are kind of nice if you're a mineral collector. Having one of these is having something that's kind of odd and unusual in a mineral collection. It's not common. And if you want something that's kind of interesting, that's affordable, one of these specimens would be great for your mineral collection. It's very, very pretty. This is kind of like a moss ball, it's just really pretty. You have all sorts of these little crystals radiating out in all different directions. This one's cool too. Yeah, they're all so unique too. Now, most of your larger crystals, you're going to find those, you know, I mean, I don't want to say you're going to find them all the time in the mountains, because you can also find them in places that are pretty flat. But what you do need is you need lots of heat and pressure. So, you know, if you're in the mountains, to make mountains, you need lots of heat and pressure to uplift mountains. So you're going to, like, find lots of cool crystals around there because you need lots of heat and pressure. So typically you're going to find a lot of these really pretty gemstones in the mountains. So you're going to find them in structures like pegmatites, which are just really mineral rich, cooled, like globules of magma. So they used to be structures called plutons, and the pegmatite is kind of like the core of a pluton. A pluton, well, I guess I should kind of explain it, right? You have these things called subduction zones, and you have these tectonic plates that are subducting underneath each other. And as a plate subducts underneath another plate, it starts to melt. And as it melts, little globules, or I should say massive globules of magma will come up, and they're kind of lighter in density. So they'll percolate up and kind of work their way through the crust. And over time, they'll just cool. And if they cool very slowly, the core of that pegmatite will be very like crystalline in structure. So once this thing reaches the surface, it will actually start to erode and kind of flake away. And once the core of the pluton is revealed, the pegmatite, that's where you're going to find things like tourmaline and sapphire, and you know, you might, if there's some fracturing, you might find some epidote, who knows. But that's where you're going to find things like that usually. Now, these guys with the tiny crystals like that, that's really cool. Lets a lot of light in. Very pretty. I think I'm going to show this one last one here. They're all so beautiful, but you know, can't show them all. All right, so this next one here is really pretty. We have this nice kind of big crystal up here. Lets a lot of light in. Let's take a look at that. Wow. Very pretty. Very pretty stuff. Again, these are all $12 each. From Peru. I'm going to move on to our next box here. Just as a reminder for everybody, we have about an hour left in our show. And again, we're basically doing this every Sunday. We didn't do it last Sunday because of Mother's Day, so you know, gotta give all of our moms some love. But generally, we're going to be doing it every Sunday. So expect us on here from 12 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we'll be doing this. All right, so next we're going to look at some galena and pyrite clusters from Peru. Like we said earlier, pyrite is commonly found with lead ore. I mean, they kind of form together, sort of. These are just really pretty. Let's take a look at that. It's really sparkly, really beautiful. And then look at the other side. Wow, look at that. So we have these interesting kind of, these might be like some calcium carbonate deposits, these little white snowball looking structures. The golden color right there, that golden ore, that is your pyrite. And then of course the steel kind of color metal, that is galena. So these two metallurgical minerals here, usually found together. Yeah, they're just really pretty. I mean, just take a look at some of those fine crystals there too. See, this is why I love metallurgical ores and minerals. I mean, they're just really pretty stuff. Really, really pretty. Now, all these specimens here, they're $19 each. So if you want one, they're all 19 bucks. Not a bad price. This guy's really cool. This is a kind of an interesting sort of octahedral galena. Generally, you're going to find galena as being cubic in structure, right? Not always. Not always. Can form different shapes depending on the heat. And got some interesting kind of blade-like structures there. Those are probably maybe some stilbite crystals. We have a little bit of chalcopyrite in there. That's that kind of bright kind of orange in there. So you're going to find that in these kinds of clusters where you have galena and pyrite found together. This one's a bit of a darker cluster, but it's still really pretty. Alright, next, let's get out one more of these. Ah, there's so many. This one has some cubic cleavage on it. Take a look at this. With this kind of like large face here, lots of galena. And then if we flip it around, we have all this other stuff. We have some chalcopyrite, some iron pyrite. Take a look at that gold in there. That's just so pretty. Now, yeah, and then all that druzy in there. I mean, that's just imagine this in the sunlight, you know? Very pretty stuff. And all of these are $19 each. So, you know, imagine, you know, I mean, these would be nice for like any mineral collector, anyone who's like into the, you know, into metaphysical stuff. I would say if a teacher wants to show their class something like this is a really kind of affordable way to do that. You know, very pretty material. Oh wow, God, ugh, so beautiful. Oh yeah, this next one is really pretty too. Just take a look at that. Now, some of these, it's like I notice something different about them every time, and you know, the druzy on some of these is just absolutely beautiful. So that druzy, if you know, if you haven't heard that term before, it's just basically a term, kind of a colloquial term for a bunch of tiny crystals covering a surface. So, for example, right here, all those little sparkles. Each little sparkle is a facet on top of a crystal. So, just kind of give you an idea, those are very tiny crystals. So if we can even get a close-up here of this, see how close we can get without defocusing the camera. About how close we can get. I mean, look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, the druzy on this one is just spectacular. Yeah, so all these guys are found in Peru. And again, you know, found in the mountains, right? So we're going to find a lot of these in veins, that kind of thing. This guy's kind of cool. It's kind of shaped like a heart. Got a lot of heart-shaped minerals today. Yeah, that pyrite in there. It's like a mix of pyrite and chalcopyrite. Usually your chalcopyrite's going to be a lot more brighter of a gold color. Iron pyrite tends to be more drabby or lighter in color. Give you an idea. Here, I'll show this piece here first. We have this guy, and then we have. Let's see which specimen would be best to show. Probably that one. All right. So we have this specimen. Now notice the gold color, right? Well, this guy. Look how light in comparison it is. So this is more of like an iron pyrite. Your chalcopyrite is going to be a little bit different, like on a chemical level, and it tends to be more colorful. Let me take a look at that. So that's just the difference right there. So generally, though, you're going to find them all together, mixed together in the same kind of like pocket. Very common. All right, we're going to move on to our next grouping here. Again, those were all $19 specimens of galena and chalcopyrite from Peru. Next, we're going to look at some of our Indian specimens. So these are all from India, from outside of Mumbai. And we have a lot of zeolite minerals. So a lot of people who are like into collecting minerals, they like, if you're not a geologist, you know, it's hard to like, you know, like know what all of these are. And there's a lot of like colloquial names, like people have like 10 different names for one thing. So, you know, it's it can be difficult trying to identify rocks if you're like not trained. So zeolite minerals, for example, they all look a little bit different from one another. Some of them look very similar, but chemically, they all have like the same, almost the same chemical formula, and the very slightest change completely changes the structure of the crystal. So, for example, we have this guy. This is an apophyllite cluster. We have some white apophyllite here, and just metaphysically speaking, a lot of these zeolite minerals from India, they're found in, you find them oftentimes in basalt, but the meaning, like esoterically, is very similar to that of quartz. So it has like a lot of similar qualities to that of quartz. Geologically speaking, these all form in basalt. So zeolite minerals, it's a group of minerals. The group includes crystals like apophyllite, stilbite, heulandite, mesolite, naturalite, cavenzite. They all look different. For example, apophyllite, it ranges in color. You might see a couple blues, maybe some light greens in here. So apophyllite, you can find it in all sorts of different colors. And these little dots here, those are some manganese deposits as well. Now, price-wise, these are all $18 each. And then our smaller zeolite specimens are all $15 each. So not a bad price for any of these. So as you can see here, though, we have this kind of bloom-like crystal here. That is stilbite. So they all form together in basalt. They're aluminosilicate minerals, so that means they have aluminum in them, and they're high in silica. And you're going to find them in basalt. So generally, these are found in the Deccan Traps, volcanic regions of India and Pakistan. And if you've ever seen pictures of it before, lots of deep gorges and valleys, very pretty area. But these are found within the basalt itself. You can find these oftentimes in Antarctica and also in Iceland, parts of Arizona, and volcanic fields in Nevada. This next specimen here is a cluster of stilbite and heulandite. We can even see the basalt matrix here. So your heulandite are going to be like this kind of lighter, kind of colored mineral here, and then your stilbite is that kind of less orange mineral there. This guy here is $18. We've got another one over here as well. This is another large specimen. Now, again, this is apophyllite, right? So we have some larger apophyllite crystals here and here. But if we look very closely, it almost looks like a cactus quartz, right? Well, that's just an apophyllite druzy. You have a bunch of tiny little apophyllite crystals all over this guy. And as you can see here, it grew kind of like a stalactite or stalagmite, where you had this kind of some sort of structure growing off of a wall, like a thin structure, and it was coated with some sort of like mineral. So these little dark rods here, these little dark dots, they probably run throughout this whole thing. They were like the seed rock that the crystal grew off of, kind of a neat little factoid about that. So this guy here is $18 as well. In fact, most of our large apophyllite clusters are going to be $18. This one's kind of neat. It's kind of shaped like a heart. Apophyllite too, I mean, if you're like looking for, you know, if you're a mineral collector, if let's say that you're into metaphysical stuff, right? You want to have a piece of quartz crystal figure altar. Apophyllite, white apophyllite, is a great alternative. It's a lot cheaper. It's more common. So it's just there's a lot more of it around. So you're going to generally get a cheaper price on this kind of stuff compared to a large quartz point, for example. Now this is a $15 specimen that I'm going to show next. It's kind of neat. We have this kind of greenish apophyllite on the top, and you have the kind of like an orange, like maybe a pinkish stilbite on the bottom. Now this is a great illustration of how chemically similar these things are. You may notice that the defining line here between the stilbite and the apophyllite, it's not really that defining. It kind of like turns into apophyllite, right? It basically, on a mineral level, like if I took an electron microscope, I would find a very, very, very slight difference. It's almost like the transition is like barely even there. Just to give you guys an idea of like how chemically similar these things are. I kind of like refer to this piece as like a piece of like a slice of watermelon, because it kind of, green on the outside, pink on the inside, kind of neat. So this guy here is $15. Next, we're going to show some naturalite. So naturalite is a green zeolite mineral. And it's a little bit more rare than the rest of the zeolite minerals. The most common are apophyllite and stilbite and helandite. But then once you start getting into like the cavenzite and the naturalite, it gets more rare. Naturalite is the rare, it's the next step up on rarity. But cavenzite is the rarest zeolite mineral. It's a bright blue, and we don't have any of it, I think. Might have one piece left. I might have sold already. That stuff tends to go a lot quicker. It's another $15 zeolite specimen. We have some larger helandite crystals this time on here with some bed of stilbite. Might actually just be mostly helandite, actually. Really pretty. Yeah, a lot of minerals look edible. I would not recommend eating them, though. We do not condone the eating of crystals. Alright. I'm going to show one more $15 specimen and move on to the next box. Some more naturalite here. It's a little more gemmy material, so we can see into there. Those little windows there, those little facets. Naturalite is very pretty. Yeah, it does kind of look like a mint candy. Alrighty. Move on to our next box here. Now, I believe this is a fine mineral specimen box. So this should probably just be a perfect amount here. So, let's see what we got. Yep, fine specimens in this one. Alright, we have all sorts of fine specimens here. Yeah, this will definitely take up the rest of our time for today. So, I think since this is kind of like the most difficult thing to show, I'll show this first. Remove the glove. So, we have these beautiful petroleum Herkimer diamond specimens, and these all come, again, these are all fine specimens, so they all come with an ID card and a box and all sorts of other things. These petroleum Herkimers, though, they're really pretty, and they actually have like oil, petroleum oil stuck inside them. So technically these are considered anhydros, meaning that they actually have a liquid trapped within the crystal. Herkimer diamonds are naturally double terminated crystals. They are very rare. They're actually more rare than actual diamonds. And they form in areas where you have lots of carbon, so coal or oil, shale, that kind of thing. So here we go. So this is a beautiful little Herkimer diamond. This guy here is $99. So definitely very rare. Those little yellow dots in there, little yellow vesicle, that is the petroleum. Now petroleum is fluorescent under a black light, and I happen to have a black light, so I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm going to turn off the lights here. Alright, so there we go, there's our black light. Now this is our Herkimer diamond, as we can see here, and if we shine that black light on it, look at that. So all those little bright green spots there, all that there, that is all petroleum trapped within the crystal. Really, really neat. So these are all found in Afghanistan. There's massive oil fields there. The Middle East countries are known for their abundance in petroleum. So again, the Herkimer diamonds forming in areas where there's lots of carbon. These just basically form on the perimeter of, oil wells and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's just really neat. They're really cool. And these types of Herkimer diamonds, this variety, is a lot more, or actually I have one more to show actually. They're a lot more rare than other varieties. So there's various varieties of Herkimer. Some that, don't have anything trapped inside them, some do. So these guys, though, are quite rare. There's another one here. If we look at this one, we got quite a few little droplets here of petroleum trapped inside. And, generally anything that's like made of carbon is going to be fluorescent like this. So when you're analyzing any kind of rock, sometimes if you just shine a black light on it, it will completely change your perspective. It'll really just makes all sorts of other things pop out. So our first Herkimer diamond specimen we showed was this guy right here. It was in a nice little display case, $99. Now all these do come with a ID card and a nice display box. This is the second one we showed. $34 for this one. So generally, the price is just basically determined on like size and quality and how much oil is trapped inside. So to kind of give you guys an idea of how that works. Next, I think we're going to show some moldavite. Should we do that? Moldavite is very cool. So moldavite is a type of impact glass, and it can be found anywhere where there's like sand or desert. So you can find it on a beach. You can find it, in the desert, like the Sahara. Now this stuff is very cool. This is all from the Czech Republic. And moldavite is just such a beautiful mineral. Just very pretty. So notice all those vesicles on there, right? Now, the origin of this mineral, moldavite, it is extraterrestrial, so it comes from space. And it's basically like a type of impact glass. So this forms like, let's say you have an open region with, some sort of dirt or fine grained sediment that's maybe has some silica in there, some other things. And when you have a meteorite or a meteor just impact the planet, what's going to happen is that impact is going to heat up the ground and liquefy it. And when that impact occurs, it creates glass. And so this glass tends to be very, there's lots of like little like holes. It looks kind of like liquid. But yeah, it's kind of neat. In the Czech Republic, where this is from, the impact, like itself, it's generally like they don't really know exactly where it occurred. They just know it happened in a certain region. But there is a pretty large crater, and the impact I think occurred around like anywhere between 13 to 15 million years ago. So in the grand scheme of things, it's fairly recent impact. But comparing this to other types of moldavite, you rarely ever see this kind of coloration. Usually it's kind of a darker or even a much lighter color than this. So the Czech Republic is where you'll find your darker kind of green moldavites. Really pretty. Now this specimen here, let's look at the price. So moldavite itself is, again, fairly expensive, and it's priced out by weight. In weight, it's 5.42 grams of moldavite. So moldavite, especially this kind of moldavite, it's going to be sold as a gemstone, because that's what it is. It is a gemstone. Now this specimen here is pretty cool. You have this kind of lighter, thin sheet on the bottom with this thicker kind of like vesicle on the top. Now this guy here is 4.53 grams, and it's $92. Yet another very pretty, beautiful specimen. Yes, it is. It is AAA quality. Now, I think our next two specimens of it are going to be a little more expensive since they are larger. Alrighty. So this guy here is $123. This is 6.11 grams. Now, as you can see, definitely the thicker it gets, the darker the color, the more extreme the color, which is really nice. Now, moldavite, a lot of like artists and jewelers will actually carve moldavite into various, fetishes. So it's even the peoples, the native peoples that lived in that area, in the Czech Republic, they would make ornamentation out of moldavite, that kind of thing. So various fetishes, animal fetishes, that kind of stuff. So the stone itself is like a cultural heritage piece for them. Alright, next, and this will be our last piece of moldavite. This is a $172 specimen here, and it is weighed at 8.57 grams. As you can see, it's a much more massive piece of moldavite. The coloration is definitely more extreme, more dark, much more beautiful in my opinion. Thick pieces like this are pieces that you'd want to carve, you know, you'd want to set into jewelry. So these pieces are really nice to work with. Now that covers our moldavite series. Now I think we're going to look at, let's look at some of this amphibole quartz. So amphibole quartz has amphibole in it. It has a couple other cool minerals that are iron rich inside. Look at this. So this pink kind of stuff here, that's your amphibole. And then it's set in quartz. Definitely a really neat, kind of pretty stone to have. This specimen here is $34. Now, seeing these kinds of inclusions inside very translucent quartz like this, definitely more rare, more uncommon. You don't see this kind of stuff too often. So you can get a close-up here of the translucency. Now this stuff here is from Brazil. Very pretty stuff. Next, we're going to look at a much tinier piece here. This is some hematite, earthy hematite calcite. And this is a very tiny, tiny specimen. This is a $4 specimen. And this would be nice for like any mineral collector. This actually has a nice display box. Take a look at this. Very cute, tiny little mineral sample here. Now, the red is all that iron. That's your earthy hematite. And all these crystal structures here, these are all calcite crystals. And this comes from Durango, Mexico. Yeah, this is another kind of really striking piece. Yeah, I mean, even though it's very tiny, it's like about no bigger than a dime. This would be a nice piece for like a mineral collector. And it's a great price too, $4 for this. Not bad. Next, here's some wolfenite. This is an $8 piece of wolfenite. Now, all of our wolfenite specimens come from Morocco. At least these ones in the fine specimen box do. And we can see that we have a nice kind of like golden orange, sun orange wolfenite crystal there. Now, wolfenite is a lead mineral. I think it's a lead oxalate mineral. And we have some really kind of pretty druzy on the back. So generally you're going to find this stuff like around lead veins, lead deposits. As we can see, we have some dark mineral here. That is galena. And it is in some kind of matrix rock here with some silica all over it. So wolfenite crystals are very tabular, really pretty crystals. And they're a lot more rare than other types of minerals. So they're a bit more expensive. This guy here, though, is $8, so not bad. And these are all kind of like tiny specimens, too. So these are kind of like, again, nice for a mineral collector. This next specimen I'm going to show here, another wolfenite crystal. This one is really high quality, but it's very tiny. It's $3, but it comes in a nice little display case. Let's see if we can get a close-up here of this guy. So, as you can see, I mean, this stuff is very, it's pretty fragile. It's very tiny, very fragile. But that does not mean that it's not dense. Being a lead-based mineral, it's very dense. So that specimen there is $3. I think next we're going to show something a little bit different. This is some dumortierite quartz from Madagascar, and this specimen here is $20. Dumortierite is another like aluminum-rich mineral, and it's quite fibrous. So when it grows in like quartz crystal, for example, the fibers kind of radiate out and through the crystal specimen. Dumortierite, though, very rare, and its deposits are dwindling. I don't even know if they're mining it anymore. So this is something that we don't have any more of. It is very expensive, and we're selling it for $20. So it's from Madagascar. And I think it's, yeah, it's an alumino borate mineral. So I guess an alumino-borosilicate. Yeah, it's very pretty. Next, we're going to show an interesting piece here. This is some Colombian quartz. Now, a lot of things come out of Colombia. And I know what you're thinking. Quartz crystal, right? Oh my god. Yeah, quartz crystal is great. Great stuff. So, Colombian quartz is very well known for being very high quality. So, when I say high quality, I mean like crystal clear, like ice. So this is Colombian quartz. A lot of quartz crystals from Colombia are usually found like in museums. You'll find some of these specimens in the Smithsonian, the Natural History Museum of London, which I've been to. It's very, very cool. But again, the quality of quartz is just phenomenal. We'll just take a look here. I mean, take a look at how clear that is. It literally, there's hardly any definition loss at all. So again, the light here, the way the light transmits through the crystal makes them very rare, usually a lot more expensive. So this point here is $45 just for this point. Really pretty, but very high quality. Next, we're going to show another Colombian quartz piece here. This specimen here, though, is a bit cheaper, even though it is actually a bit wider. I think there's actually more material on this guy. Let's take a look here. So, this specimen, another Colombian quartz point, as we can see, very clear, right? So that's classic for Colombian quartz. Very defined facets as well. You know, I'd say that for the scarcity of this stuff, it is fairly good quality. You'd call these AAA specimens for sure. Now again, this specimen here is $24, so quite a bit cheaper than the other specimen. Generally, these kinds of points are measured by length, so the longer they are, usually that's a little more difficult to form, so they're going to be a bit more rare. Next, we're going to show another interesting specimen here. This is a piece of purple fluorite from Durango, Mexico. This specimen here is $42, and it is gorgeous. Take a look at that. So we have some cubic fluorite here, and this is a fairly recent find. So it's kind of like a very dark, kind of black looking fluorite. As we can see, that cubic structure there, very pretty. The last time that we had a deposit available of cubic fluorite that was high quality, mind you, was somewhere in America. I believe it was like on the East Coast. I forget the name of the mine, but they completely exhausted the deposit, and they had gorgeous pieces of purple fluorite. Gosh, I used to have a piece on my desk. It's not here anymore. It's probably in a box somewhere. But you can't find that stuff anymore. That stuff was all mined out back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So about like 4 years ago, a pocket opened up in Durango, Mexico, and they found some of this stuff. So it's very beautiful stuff, quite rare. So this guy here, again, is $42. And what's interesting and kind of unique about these, compared to the other fluorite that was out of America, the fluorite in Durango is really purple on the outside, but kind of clear on the inside. So it's a very thin layer, which kind of gives a very unique veiled appearance. So it's kind of a neat specimen for sure. Next, we're going to look at some lepidolite from Minas Gerais, Brazil. And lepidolite, again, a type of mica. So micas are used a lot in makeup. With lepidolite, though, what gives it its color is its abundance in lithium. So whenever you have a pegmatite that has like intrusions of lithium deposits, you're going to find lepidolite mica instead of muscovite mica. Usually these micas are used a lot in things like blush and makeups and things like that. So if you're into makeup, this stuff is probably in your makeup. As you can see, though, the light index, so the light actually travels through it pretty well. You can actually see the silhouette of my finger on the other side. So that's pretty neat with this stuff. It's kind of neat stuff. It's very flaky. Generally, it forms in these, these very linear cleavage planes. That's what's kind of classic about mica, or any kind of mica, for example. And the lepidolite, though, it's much more rare than actual muscovite mica, so you generally don't see it a lot. Look at this one. So seeing that clarity in there as well is something that's pretty uncommon. So kind of makes these pieces stand out a bit more. Now, price-wise, it's the same price for both of these, $22 each for the lepidolite. So not a bad price for a mineral specimen like this. Not bad at all. So next, let's see here. We have a couple more specimens here. I think we're going to look at some phantom amethyst here. This is some more phantom amethyst from Namibia. Kind of a little phantom amethyst balloon. This guy here is $42. And you kind of maybe already had the idea that a lot of these phantom amethysts come from Namibia. Just the occurrence where these occur. There was lots of interruptions in the crystal growth. The region that these are found in has been undergoing very drastic tectonic changes over the course of a couple of million years. So lots of movement that can greatly affect crystal growth. So, but as we can see here, we have some pretty defined phantoms in there. Very pretty. And it's called cactus amethyst, right? Because it's like kind of like a little cactus bloom. There's kind of little spiky points everywhere. Very, very neat. So here's some other phantom amethyst. This is actually a tinier piece from Namibia. So we have tiny, like a tiny phantom amethyst druzy here, but it's another cactus. Just take a look here at how the light kind of shines through it too. See the silhouette of my finger on the other side. Look at that. Very pretty kind of like agate banding we have going on in there. And of course, being a druzy, right, the more facets we have, the more surfaces the light can reflect off of. They're like little mirrors. So take a look at that. Very sparkly, very pretty. Commonly, we'll find some calcite crystals as well on amethyst, so that's pretty common. This specimen there was $24, so not bad. These next two specimens, I think I'll show the topaz first. So these are, this is the only topaz we have currently. This is blue topaz from Brazil. And topaz is one of the strongest minerals besides diamond. And it can scratch pretty much everything. So, you know, topaz is, I believe actually it's less common than diamond. Diamond is actually pretty common. The only reason that diamonds are so darn expensive is because the price is controlled. A lot of big diamond companies, what they do, see, you know, this is why you shouldn't get diamonds for a wedding ring. You should not get diamonds. Diamonds are really common. They're not that special. The only thing that is special about them is the fact that human beings, say that they're special. They're very common. They're found all over the place. They're very expensive because these big diamond corporations, these big mining corporations, they only let out certain amounts at a time onto the market, and they purposefully inflate the price. Isn't that terrible? So really you're paying like, I don't know, you're paying like, let's say $400 for a stone that really is just worth $1. And a lot of these diamond mines, they use things like child labor and like slave labor in other countries. So yeah, I am not a fan of diamond mines at all. Not to say that diamonds aren't cool, but they're not as cool as topaz or Herkimer diamonds, for example. Now, a lot of these topaz crystals, you're going to find these oftentimes in like mountainous regions. Now, the specimen I just showed here was $38. No, not bad for topaz, right? And this guy here is $35. Now, topaz is very hard, but you can actually, you know, cut it into a gemstone, like a faceted stone. And these kind of rough pieces are nice, just as like display pieces, or, you know, just to have if you're a collector. Me personally, I like things that are more natural and rough compared to things that are more refined and faceted. So this would be a nice option for someone like me. But if you're, let's say you're a gem cutter, or you're a lapidary artist, or someone who wants to work with stones like this, getting rough like this is great. This is a great way to start. So yeah, so this guy here, $35. Now next, we're going to look at another gemstone that forms in pegmatites, some aquamarine. So aquamarine is a type of beryl crystal, and it's called beryl. It's not spelled beryl like, you know, whiskey barrel, but the name does come from that shape. It is shaped kind of like a whiskey barrel, very kind of round, cylindrical. So this is an aquamarine specimen here. This is a $50 aquamarine crystal. Take a look at that. All natural faceting. And as you can see, very high quality. You can see right through it. Very light blue. Now, aquamarine like this usually comes from Pakistan. That's where this specimen does come from. Yeah, take a look at that. The way the light just plays with the stone, absolutely gorgeous. Very pretty. So again, $50 for that specimen. Comes in a nice, cute little display case. So a lot of our nice gemstones, they are going to be, you know, in a nice display case. You don't have to worry about them being loose or anything like that. Alright, so next is a zeolite mineral, and this is a piece of heulandite with some apophyllite crystals. This specimen here is $10. This is a very high quality specimen. So zeolites are very common, but what makes this pretty uncommon is the translucency of the crystals. You have such high quality crystals here in this tiny little specimen. Just take a look at that clarity there, that sharpness. Very cool. So these apophyllite crystals, those are these little tiny clear crystals here. And then you have your heulandite specimen, which is this large kind of like lighter, very light pink kind of crystal here in the middle. Now, just as a reminder for everybody, if you see something you like on the stream, put it in the comments section below, put it in the chat, say, hey, I want that thing, and we'll get you an order set up. And if you're watching this as a pre-recorded video on demand, on YouTube, for example, just because the stream happened doesn't mean that we might not have that thing available. So please message us and say, hey, is that thing from that time on the stream is still available? And we'll hook you up. Alrighty, so next, this is a piece of hemicalcite, and this is very, very pretty stuff. So as you can see, we have some earthy hematite here for the matrix, and we have this beautiful kind of like yellowish iron stained calcite right here, all these little crystals. Now we have a couple minerals here that you know, like will form together and look very similar. There are minerals that form with or around calcite, but chemically they're pretty much calcium carbonate. So we just group that into a group of minerals and call that calcite. So if you're really like specific about it, and you're a very studious mineral collector, you could say, oh well, that could be like analytite, but really it's just calcite. Now this specimen here is $6, so not bad for this tiny little guy. Comes in a nice little box. Next, we're going to look at this beautiful wolfenite specimen. This is a $9 specimen, a lot larger than the other ones. And has some nice big crystals. Look at that. Very, very pretty. See if we can get a close-up here. So lots of like tiny little wolfenite crystals. Then we have these two large ones here. Very pretty fine specimen. Yeah, those tabular wolfenite crystals are just so stunning. Again, that was a $9 specimen from Morocco. It's another wolfenite specimen from Morocco. We have more like kind of square-like tabular crystals on this guy here. Yeah, just very pretty stuff. You know, these guys are really nice for like having like on your shelf or something like that. So, you know, they're fragile. I mean, wolfenite crystals are not the strongest things in the world. So if you are, just be careful with them. Now that specimen there was $20. I think lastly, we're going to look at some of these. Well, I don't know. We got a couple things here left. So got some amethyst here. Let's look at some of this amethyst and some of this prehnite. So this is some more Phantom Amethyst from Namibia. We have this like large amethyst point. We have some phantoms in there, so kind of neat. You can even see those phantoms in there too. Yeah, the phantoms are really nice to see in points like this. And this is much more of a decent sized point, just like the crown. As we can see, it's kind of like the root was very short, or it got broken off. Looks like it might have gotten broken. But it looks like a very tiny little point. Very, very cool stuff. Now this guy here, this is a $19 specimen. Yet another beautiful amethyst specimen from Namibia. We have quite a few of these. Next, we have a $28 cactus bloom phantom amethyst from Namibia. Take a look at that. So these are really pretty, just on every angle, right? We have this back side with a nice little matrix rock. Very, very pretty. Yeah, and these blooms are really nice too. I mean, when they're cut like this, like on a flat surface, very pretty to have like on your desk, or put it anywhere, on your car, I don't know. Any shaped stones with a flat surface, great for putting on your desk somewhere, on a shelf, on your altar, that kind of thing. I'm just taking a look at that crystal structure in there too. That's really pretty. Again, this is a $28 specimen from Namibia. And look at that green matrix rock in there. That's really pretty. All right. So the last specimen that we're going to show today, since it's nearing that time, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, sadly. We're going to show some prehnite. Now, I'm not too sure how this is going to show up on the camera, but it is really pretty. Now, the prehnite has this sort of gemmy center, and this is what it looks like. It's very botryoidal, but it has this very dense kind of center in here. And not too sure what that might be. It's I mean, these are aluminosilicate minerals, so it looks like it could be like a concentration of some sort of like I don't know, like aluminum ore maybe, because that is pretty dark green stuff. I don't know, that might be could be epidote. I mean, you're usually going to find aluminosilicates in volcanic areas, so that would just make sense. But yeah, these are just really cool, very pretty. Now these are all $12 each, I believe. Let me just check. Oh, we got one that's 19. Yep, this one's $19. And next we have this guy, which is $12. Again, another interesting little center. Yeah, they kind of look like gumballs, right? Or like a gummy bear, very jello-like. We can even see some strata layering here going on. Now these are all from Canada as well. So, yeah, I mean, this is another one of those really odd minerals. If you're, looking for something kind of exotic to add to your collection, this is a nice addition. Again, this guy is $12. Now this next specimen here is $19. Again, kind of like the same thing. We have a kind of a dark, kind of gemmy center here. Now, this prehnite is really pretty. It's kind of like a light, like sort of seafoam or lime green color. I like it. It's kind of cool. Now, one thing I'd like to see here, you know, they are a little like they do decompose at the surface easily, so they may seem a little dusty, right? I'd like to try to cut one of these open and see what's on the inside. That might be really cool. Yeah, I would like to see that. Again, this guy right here is $19 from Canada, our good old neighbors up north. All right. Well, I think this is probably going to cover it for today, guys. We covered, like, well, probably close to 100 different minerals today. Somebody should go back and count. All right, so again, thank you guys for watching. Another awesome stream with so many awesome minerals. Again, we're going to be doing this next Sunday from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, you know, definitely tune in then as well. And again, as always, the stuff is, you know, all recorded. So if you're watching us on Twitch, on our Twitch channel, we should have a little button that says YouTube on it. Click that, it will take you to our YouTube channel. And on there, we have all of our recorded streams. So look on there. And in the future, we're planning on making some cool mining videos. So that'd be kind of neat. If you're watching us on Facebook, we have a link to our YouTube channel in our advertisement for this whole thing. So if you want, go on there, check out all the links, subscribe, follow us. You know, you'll get a notification when we stream again. So again, thank you guys for supporting us and watching our stream, and we will see you guys next time, next Sunday.